Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the Financial Freedom Podcast. And today I have a very special guest with me. So, I have Romit, who is the founder of Zappit. Yeah, so so we're also kind of just testing out this equipment that I just bought. so, I hope this is just like a fun conversation. So, yeah,
Thanks for having me. First of all.
yeah, thanks for being here, man.
Sure, sure.
Right.
It was
So,
long awaited.
yes, it's been a while since I've been wanting to do this, and so yeah, it's just I'm a bit lame in life, so it takes me some time to
Lame or lazy?
lazy and lame, both of them. Right. So, like the idea for this podcast series is that like I just want to talk to a bunch of cool people and see how they have like figured out their financial side of things in life. Right, because what I sort of noticed in my journey was that like a lot of people end up actually losing a lot of their time in order to like make money, and then they're never really able to like live life, right?
Right.
And I see this as a bottleneck of sorts, and I'm just curious to see how different people are like figuring out their life, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, maybe first I would just like to get a bit of your backstory, like how did you start off? Where did you uh, like go for schooling and shit? And then how did you end up starting your own company? So if you could just tell us a bit about your journey.
Okay, sure. So yeah, I think born and brought up in Bangalore. Most of my life just lived in Bangalore. Again, schooling, college, everything Bangalore. I just had a pretty normal life to start off with, like a normal kid. Scoring normal marks, not like very high, not too very low, just the mediocre person. But I think my life kind of changes in around 2013 when I basically look at everything that's happening in the world and I start noticing patterns, right? I kind of start studying about the history, about religion, about finance, things like this. And think my perspective starts to change. Since I was a kid, I was always against the idea of authority in a way.
Mhm.
So that always stuck to me, but I never really had strong concepts of how everything else would work without authority. But yeah, 2013 is when I basically started doing all kinds of research. That's when everything starts to change for me.
Mhm.
Especially in the financial aspect, because I started studying about the banking history, basically about how everything came about,
Mhm.
and saw that everything was really screwed up. And
Mhm.
yeah, so at that time I started looking out for solutions. In the beginning I could not find anything, right? So I thought, okay, it's just better to just go live in the woods. Nothing can be done at this point in the cities, so I
Mhm.
would rather just go live in the forest alone.
Mhm.
Just off-grid solution kind of thing.
Right.
But I would also spend some time in the darknets a bit. That's when I kind of read about Bitcoin for the first time.
Mhm.
But then I started doing more research, came to the mainstream, and read a lot of articles and things like that. Definitely saw it as a solution to the entire banking industry. And but the way it looked like at that time, it was like it's going to take a long time for this thing to come to the mainstream.
Mhm.
So I never really paid attention to it too much. I didn't get into the details maybe until 2015. So I was just skimming the high level details. That's it.
Mhm.
And this was during college. I was studying engineering at the time. So mostly I was just busy studying at the time. But 2015 is when I actually dropped out. So that was quite pivotal again because I wanted to get into music. I was very interested in composing music, producing music. I wanted to become a DJ, I wanted to mix music, things
Mhm.
like that. So I had a lot more time with me to actually do more research about these things. And yeah, actually at this point I fell in love with Bitcoin because of what it actually stands for. I looked into the economics of it, and I looked into the technical aspects of it. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is something that I need to pay attention to.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that's when I started paying more attention to it. I started getting into the details of it, and that's when I started talking to other people about it as well. I started telling him, you should look into it. You should look into it.
Hmm.
It's really good. Again, this was 2015 onwards was just the beginning of my journey. I went back into college. I was studying economics because I really fell in love with the concept of economics. Because people generally think of economics as a financial aspect, but I think economics applies to everything in general.
Hmm.
It's basically the study of demand and supply,
Right.
which applies to literally anything in life.
Hmm.
So you could apply the concepts of economics to anything. But of course, it's mainly used in the financial aspect
Hmm.
by the people. Um, yeah, apart from that, while I was studying, I wanted to do something in the space of Bitcoin. No, I just didn't want to evangelize Bitcoin my whole life. I wanted to get into cryptocurrencies and I wanted to build something on top of it. So after my college, that's where I began. So the idea that I wanted to build something, right?
Hmm.
Um, but by 2017, something changed. The cryptocurrency industry started going to another direction.
Hmm.
Uh, in the beginning, it was all about payments, and it was supposed to challenge the banking industry, right? Like
Hmm.
the centralized banking industry.
Right.
But that stopped in a way. Like
Hmm.
nobody paid attention to the payment side of cryptocurrencies.
Right.
Like it's in the word currency, it says cryptocurrency, but
Hmm.
all of a sudden the narrative changed to store of value. Like
Right.
how you can actually make money from this, how you can buy this asset and profit out of it. And people started moving away from actually using these assets.
Hmm.
So that's where I thought, okay, fine. I got my idea. I think I'll just build a platform where people can actually use it, because most of the platforms out there, they were just trading or exchanges or things like this. Mostly just on and off ramps
Right.
into cryptocurrency, but nothing that you could actually use it in day-to-day life.
Hmm.
So that's where my idea began. Like, okay, fine, I'm going to build something that regular people can actually use in the day-to-day life.
Right.
So it started off by a basic wallet with the concept of it being a payment app.
Hmm.
But then, you know, 2017, I think in India, everybody could know that our central bank, our great central bank, introduced uh, some sort of, you know, like they basically asked all the companies to stop working, banks to stop working with all the companies, right?
Hmm.
And every crypto company at that point had to move out of the country. They could not really get a bank account in India.
Right.
So that's where my idea of, okay, maybe we can have an on-off ramp, but it has to be peer-to-peer.
Right.
Uh, yeah, so we ended up building a peer-to-peer exchange into the wallet. So that's where it started off with. And in the beginning, it was just me really working on this project. It was more like an experiment that I wanted to build something. I wanted to learn how to build something.
Hmm.
Apart from, as I mentioned, DJing, I'd never really worked in a corporate environment. So I didn't even know how things work, So
Hmm.
everything was an experiment for me. Yeah, I just began this project, started working on it. I learned how to code just to build this project, right?
Hmm.
Mostly self-taught from YouTube
Hmm.
and maybe a few other articles and few other websites.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, now it's a completely different project, but I would say that's my intro to it.
Wow, and that's quite an amazing journey. It's like so because so I'm interested in this part where like you decided that okay, there are some of these things which are interesting to me, and then you just figured out along the way that,
Yes,
and I see this as like a bottleneck for a lot of people
definitely, yes.
because like the way I see it, there are so many people who just look at the world and they feel like I need to go to this institution to teach me something, right?
Yes.
So how did you kind of break away from that thought process and then just like figure out your own thing?
Well, I think from my childhood, I've always been like that.
Okay.
I've always been curious about things. I know every kid is always curious, and then they usually end up in these so-called educational institution, and then the curiosity is just taken away from you.
Right.
But I don't know. I just happened to retain it. I have no idea how it happened because it was, when I was a kid, basically.
Hmm.
But I just retained the curiosity, and I always was interested in a lot of different things. I wanted to gain knowledge in as many aspects as possible. I wanted to read about things. I wanted to learn about things. I like watching YouTube videos which were very informational, like reading articles. I wouldn't say I'm more of a book reader because I don't really like spending so much time just finishing an entire book. But if there's like a summary of that, then I would definitely read that just to understand most of the concepts. Yes, I might miss the tiny details that might be got only from the reading of the entire book. But I'm okay with that. I'm more of a high level, I guess, than specific.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, it's really weird that I turned out a bit different in that way. Uh, yes, I have recognized by talking to a lot of other people and trying to convince them to have some interests and to get into things and to actually be able to do something. But people are clueless. That's what I figured out while I talk to them. You know, they
Right.
don't tend to understand how to even be interested in the first place.
Right.
So I'm not sure how to answer that question. It's just something that happened internally, I guess.
Right. Right. Cool. So, like, one of the ideas behind the Financial Freedom podcast for me is like, for me, what I'm primarily interested is basically in the quality of life. Right. I see money is a tool. It's a tool that enables you to live. Right. And I see that a lot of people have sort of lost this perspective, where there's so many people, like, of course, like, because that's how our system is driven,
Yeah.
that from school you have to like study hard, get good marks, and then get a high paying job, and then progress through that career,
Yeah.
and da da da. And like, of course, there are a lot of people who just struggle their whole life in that loop, and then they die eventually.
Yeah.
But then what is interesting to me is that even the people who make it, like, okay, now you're there, the so-called there, right? And maybe you have bought yourself like a Jaguar or a BMW X5 or something like that. It's like, but you're still caught in that loop. And what happens is, like, from my point of view, like, the quality of life is very low. And like, what I would consider like a high quality of life is essentially the ability to do what you want to do.
Right.
Like, even if you have like a Jaguar, but then your secretary is like, sir, you have this meeting from this time to that time, and then you have to go there, and then you have to go there, and all of your time is kind of like gone in those chunks, right? Then you're not really getting to live. So in that sense, uh, like, what how would you suggest that, say people are like coming out of college, right? How can they kind of try to navigate this space so that they can have like a higher quality of life? But before that, maybe you could tell us a bit more about how do you live your life, how does your life kind of unfold?
Okay, so I think I would answer that a bit differently because I think there are two different ways of looking at it, right?
Right.
So there are two different kind of people. One is those who are actually interested in doing something all the time.
Right.
Like I would put myself in that category because I can't just stay still, right? Like
Right.
I can't sit and watch a movie, for example. I
Right.
would do it very rarely, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time doing that because I feel like just consumption is not what I built for. I
Right.
like doing something that's productive all the time. It doesn't matter if it's one thing.
But I would say you have created the freedom for yourself to do that
I wouldn't
in
still
some
say I've
sense.
done so much freedom for myself. I would say I'm still working. I'm still in that process. I wouldn't say I'm completely free, right?
Okay.
I'm getting there. I'm definitely maybe ahead of others in that sense, but I wouldn't say I'm 100% free, right?
Mhm.
So, for example, if I just stop doing everything that I'm doing right now, I might be able to sustain myself for a while, but after a while, then I would run into the same issues, right?
Right.
So I think the concept here is that you need to be able to struggle a bit in the beginning until you get to the point where you don't have to struggle,
Mhm.
because you don't start off with everything in your life, right?
Right.
Even if you're, let's say, you're inheriting a large amount of wealth from your parents, it's still better if you build something for yourself,
Right.
even if that wealth were to disappear.
Mm.
Or let's say your parents decide that, hey, I hate you, I'm not going to give you any of my inheritance. Well,
Mm.
what are you going to do at that point? You
Right.
still want to be able to do something for yourself
Mm.
where you have enough to sustain yourself. After that, you can basically enjoy the freedom that you have built for yourself
Right.
from that point onwards. Uh, but yes, it is definitely not easy, right? Because this world, the way it's just built right now, you have to constantly keep working and upgrading yourself because there are things that are deteriorating.
Mhm.
Like for example, the money that you earn itself
Right.
does not stay still. So I think that's where majority of the people struggle with,
Mhm.
which is whatever they earn, it doesn't really stay the same.
It doesn't retain its value.
It doesn't retain its value. So that's why people get stuck in that loop of constantly being able to or being in the process of earning more and more just to sustain themselves.
Right.
Of course, there are people who have made it there. They still work. That could be for two reasons. One could be that they just want to work. Second is they probably want more than what others have, right? You
Right.
look at the top of the top people, the billionaires, and you're like, I want either as much as them or even more than them. So there are people that just want to keep getting. Uh, yeah, I would say again, there's different perspectives to this,
Right.
uh, but I think it's the choice of individual how he which path he wants to take, whether he wants to do enough for himself to just sustain and then just enjoy his life,
Right.
or does he want to continue to strive to be the best available out there, or you want to struggle your entire life.
Right. Mhm. So, like you figured out coding by yourself
Yeah.
from YouTube and things like that. Cool. So, what was your educational background?
So as I said, I did do 2 years of engineering, but
2 years. So you dropped out in between.
yeah, I dropped out after 2 years
Wow.
because I never really was interested in engineering to begin with. I was
Okay.
forced into it.
Mm.
So it was information science, so it was computer science.
Right.
But I think anyone that goes to college knows that, especially in the first 2 years, you barely learn anything. You learn the basics of coding,
Mhm.
but nothing really that's in the industry level experience. You don't get anything, right?
Right.
Most of the engineers, after they complete their engineering, after they come out, they still have to go through a course in
Mm.
order to get into the actual job that they're getting. They have to do internships, they have to do all that. So it's far better to learn by yourself using the internet at this point. Like with what we have today, I
Right.
think you can just learn most of what you want from the internet.
Right.
That's what I did. So basically, as I said, I learned coding to build the app. Right. So literally, my first YouTube search was how to build an Android app. Right. And
Mm.
then I just started building the app using that tutorial. So I didn't follow that tutorial to build what the guy was building in that tutorial. I used those concepts to build what I wanted.
Right.
So that's how I learned. And I feel like that was way faster and way better to learn because I'm not going through the learning process and then starting to build.
Mm.
I'm building as I learn. Of course, it could be slower. Uh, there could be mistakes that happen, but it's way better than wasting 4 years of your life in engineering and then doing another 6 months or a year of internship and then joining as a junior dev and then starting to build your product.
Right.
If people want to do that, they can. It's just for my path, I didn't see that as a viable option.
Right.
So yeah, so I just learned how to code myself. But I think generally, if you really want to learn any concept, you should apply it. Like you should
Mhm.
apply it in a real world use case and learn based on that. Because whatever you learn in a closed environment, you're not really affected by the externalities that you have in the open world,
Mm.
right? So when you're building an app, you don't if you're building like a test app, you don't have users, so you're unlikely to find bugs that you might find in a production uh,
Right.
version of the app. Just giving examples, of course, but it applies to any field.
Other field. Right. So, would you say like education is a complete scam or it has some use?
Well, the word education is very important,
Okay.
but the industry education is a scam.
Right.
So the educational system that's being run, at least I can speak from the point of view of the Indian context.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, if you have studied anytime in the last 5 6 years, you know it's definitely a scam
Right.
because you go to college, you sit there, they start teaching you the concepts. The moment 1 month or 2 months have been passed, the first thing that they get into is, hey, these are the questions that are going to appear in the exam. So
Right.
practice these things.
Right.
It's not like, hey, these are the concepts that you need to learn for the real world, what you
Mm.
need to build or what you need to do. It's more of just to pass the exam.
Right.
And they help you pass the exam, right?
Right.
Right, well, you get good scores, then the college reputation goes up.
Right.
So they don't necessarily care about what you learn, but
Mhm.
they care more about how much marks you earn,
Right.
and they're gonna just steer you towards that.
Yeah.
And we see that students have also become like that. because it's
Yes.
more like if you want to get a job,
Hmm.
you need to have high marks. It doesn't matter whether you actually understand that concept or not. You
Right.
just need to get high marks.
Cool. So for someone, see, because this is a decision that not everyone is able to take. Like you
Yeah.
were able to drop out in second year of college, but there is a certain degree of fear,
Mhm.
right? Let's say if I'm a student who's just finished his 12th,
Mhm.
right? And I have not explored the world so much,
Right.
and like I have a fair sense, let's
Mhm.
say, that because I've been through school and I've
Right.
seen that okay, there is this same system where like okay, in physics and chemistry, I just had to do the same thing. Like I had to like memorize some stuff, very important questions, and all of
Right.
that.
Right.
And I have this sense that possibly college is the same thing,
Yeah.
and I have this desire to drop out. But then there is also this like fear and anxiety that this is
Yeah.
what society is doing in general, right? So how can I make a better decision? Like should I go to college? Should I drop out? And if I drop out, if I don't go to college, then how do I like figure out my life?
Well, ideally, you shouldn't even join the college to begin with.
Okay.
So if you've already, if you have not joined a college, don't, right?
Hmm.
If there is an interest for you to do something, then learn it through other means. For example, I told you there are, for I think for most of the things, internet is good enough.
Hmm.
But if there are things that need practical exposure, you work under someone who's already working in that field, who already knows a lot in that field, right?
Right.
Let's say as an apprentice, right? So instead of paying fees to the college, you could you could pay a guy who's already working in that field to teach you,
Hmm.
right? Ideally, this is how internships generally should work like. But even today, internships are also where you just pay to get a certificate, but you don't really learn anything, right? The
Right.
companies are willing to give you a certificate just to get the money that you would be willing to give. But there are a lot of people that have expertise in a lot of different fields that need help.
Hmm.
They need like a junior level help for whatever they're doing, right?
Hmm.
So you can actually try and find those, and there are enough people, like trust me, especially in the startup worlds and in the small workspaces, right? There are enough experts that require junior help. So it's way better to approach them and say, hey, I'm really interested in this. I would like to help you build whatever you're building. uh, Meanwhile, I can learn whatever you're doing. So I think that's the best way to learn any concept that there is outside.
Hmm.
Because I'll tell you this, right? So you go to a college, there are professors. Most of these professors or teachers, they haven't really worked in those fields. Most of them have come out of college and they've become teachers directly. Like, what
Right.
are they really teaching? So they're teaching what's in the book, right?
Right.
But they're not necessarily teaching what's out there in the industry as well.
Right. Right.
So taking the example of, let's say, coding, which I'm more familiar with,
Right.
programming, well, you can teach programming about the things that you yourself have built. If
Yeah.
you have built an app, then you can teach how to build an app. Or if you're managing an app, you can teach how to build an app. But if you've learned how to program from a college and then you go directly and teach programming, what industry level experience do you really have? How do you know what is actually required today,
Hmm.
right? Because companies know what is required,
Right.
teachers don't. Like,
Hmm.
probably I'll just use the example of Google, Facebook, Amazon. They know what is required in the programming world. The teachers don't necessarily know what is
Right.
exactly required.
Right.
They only know, okay, this is what the concepts that is there in the book, so we're just going to teach that. Well, ideally, I think a more expert programmer who has more time, well, he will have more time if he has more junior devs working under him. He
Right.
can teach. He can teach way better than any other teacher.
Right.
So I think teachers generally should be experienced people. That's why you call them master, right? Like, it's because you're a
Right.
master at that uh,
Thing.
thing.
Yeah.
You're not a master because you teach. You're a
Correct.
master because you know that thing and then you're willing to teach.
Right.
So I think that's the problem here, because most of the teachers don't really know what's going on out there. They just teach it.
Right. Right. Awesome. So would you be willing to take some junior devs under you?
Yeah, we do actually. We just started hiring interns, and we are teaching. Like, I
Okay.
have some experience with blockchain, and there are junior blockchain developers, there are junior front end developers that are joining our company, and we are teaching them. We are teaching them how it works, and in
Okay.
turn, we are getting some job done by them that we require for our app, some sort of development. Because we need help, right? So, like, there's a lot of lines of code to be written, and there's only so many lines of code that one human can write at a time.
Hmm.
It's always good to get help, and all you have to do is just teach the concept of what is actually required in your app, and then they learn that.
Right.
Yes, I agree that when they learn whatever is required for you, they may not learn the other things. But again, that's up to the interest of the individual. If
Right.
he's interested to learn this, he should. One can't learn everything, so they have to
For sure.
choose what to learn.
Right.
And when you work under the person, as I said, who's already having experience with this, it's better. It's better. It's like mutually beneficial, you know.
Right.
So, but colleges are not mutually beneficial.
For sure. For sure. I also don't like that
Yeah.
quite a bit. Sweet. So then tell me a bit more about see some of the adventures that you've had in life. Like so the career side, okay, cool.
Right.
Like somehow okay, fine. Like in terms of like knowledge, cool, you can like figure out some stuff from the
Mhm.
internet, is what you're suggesting, like go to YouTube, watch
Yes.
things, get skills, like be more direct in life, don't waste your time in like school and college and all of that
Right.
stuff. So would you suggest like drop out of school as well?
Um, well, it depends on what stage we are talking about, right?
Right.
So I have a completely different idea of how school level education should be done in first place.
Uh-huh.
I think the first few years of a child's life should be basically taught by the parents. I think
Hmm.
the parents should have enough skill to you don't want to outsource raising your child from the from the beginning stages, you know.
Right, right.
And I think in your beginning of your life, you should learn basic survival skills, which nobody learns.
Hmm.
Like you need to learn how to make fire, for example, or grow a tree, or like you know, basically be able to grow your own food, things
Hmm.
like this. You know how to build your own shelter. I think these are more important in the youngest stages of life. And once you're a bit more older, like let's say 10 years old or something like that, then you can start learning all the other concepts.
Hmm.
You know, like whatever is taught in schools, for example. That again, I would say is more of an individual choice. If the if the if the parents have made it right, if they have so much financial freedom, I think they would have enough time to sit and teach their children all the concepts. But then because these are general concepts that you learn, you don't
Right.
learn specific concepts, right? Like
Correct.
you learn like basics of physics, chemistry, mathematics, which are quite important. You don't need to know specifics in that age. The parents could either choose to teach them, or at that point you could find somebody else who's probably more well versed in those things to
Hmm.
teach. Uh, but I think the idea is by the time a kid is a young adult and he's able to learn things for himself, you should teach him how to learn instead of what to learn.
Right.
Like how to learn whatever you want to learn.
Hmm.
I think that's the job that a parent should do. And by the time they're ready, they choose like they start exploring concepts, and then
Right.
they're like, okay, this is what interests me. These things I don't like, but this is what
Right.
interests me.
So this is actually a meta skill that pretty much everyone should have of
Yes,
sorts,
yes,
right?
but
Like
yeah, there are basic skills that people should definitely
right,
have.
right. And in a sense, like if I think about it, what our education system is doing is it's kind of doing just the opposite of that.
Sure, yeah.
Right. And well, yeah, because I would say like children are kind of naturally curious
Yeah,
of sorts,
yes,
and like our system kind of beats that out, and because like and it gives you like the very important questions and the very important questions, and then the kid who does like verbatim same thing repeat gets like 99, and the kid
yeah,
who just tries to like think about things and then look out the window and just wondering, it's like what's up with the clouds, why does that happen,
they're called autistic.
right, and yeah, those are like penalized in
Yeah,
some sense, right? And then the longer you stay with that system, the more brain dead you become in a sense, and then you can kind of like fit into this giant machine of sorts.
yeah,
But anyway, this is going to a different darker territory, but just cool. So coming back, cool, so you can learn your skills by yourself, and then you can also learn it from people who are like really good.
yeah.
But maybe you can shed some light on that. Suppose I was just coming out of 12th, you
Mhm.
know, and I have kind of figured out that okay, cool, I don't want to go to college.
Okay,
Right. Now, how can I actually find cool people that I can like work under and then like gain these skills so that I can like save those 4 years, and by that time I will actually be at a much better position than my
right.
peers. So how can I do that process?
Sure. Ideally, I think from much earlier than that, you should have learned how to socialize and network with other people.
Right.
You should try to talk to as many people as possible. Like explore different things. So if you, for example, if you're exploring, let's say, sports, right? You would go to different sports arenas or matches, and then you start talking to different people, start getting involved. there are coaches, there are other players, there are people who are also willing to learn. You start socializing with them, you start networking with them. So
Right.
that's how you get contacts, right? Like you get the contact of the thing that you need, and yeah, you approach them and you make clear as to what your intention is. Like, hey, I want to learn this, or I just want to watch this, right?
Right.
And if they are really interested to teach you, they will. Maybe some
Hmm.
people say, no, we don't want to teach you. Get lost.
Right.
Fine. Sometimes there are people out there like that, and then you just find another one. This does take time to find the right interest and to find the right people to get along with. I think that again, it's all about exploration. You need to explore the interest, the people, the connections, and the resources. So build up your resources before you could even get to doing something.
Right.
So I would say, yeah. So once you have the resources, now you have the interest, you have resources, you put those two together, you're able to, yeah, start working on that, start learning that. You're already involved in it. I
Hmm.
think that's how you usually tackle that.
Cool. Awesome. So you can get your skills from a bunch of places. You build up your resources. Then you uh, network, have the ability to like meet people in
Yeah.
different spheres of uh, life which are interesting to you, and then you can like connect with like cool
Hmm.
people, and then you can like work with them, learn
Yeah,
from them,
that's what I did
gain skills.
with my stuff, right? So
Right.
how did I learn the specific thing that I'm doing right now? Well, I started with a basic general YouTube search, as I said, but then over time there's only so much that YouTube can also teach you, right?
Right.
Then you will have to find specific people to get you further. Yeah, with respect to blockchain, I can tell you that my specific interest was Bitcoin Cash. So I started getting involved in the Bitcoin Cash community. Right, I started paying attention. I started, following other developers. For example, I would see what they would post. They would post some kind of resources. They would post their own work. That, hey, this is what I've done. I would go through their work, for example, and I would try to replicate that myself. Try to
Hmm.
understand. If I had doubts, I would try to contact them. I would try to
Right.
message them, right? And I would ask them, hey, do you know anybody else that could help me in the same field? And you start percolating like that. Go from one person
Right.
to
Right.
another, one company to another, just
Right.
contact them, one project to another, just contacting them. Maybe you could do some work for them. Like, hey, I want to help you out. Again,
Right.
it goes back into that same
Right.
loop.
Right. It's actually pretty interesting phenomena that once you do it, you realize how amazingly easy it is. And when you look
Yes.
at the people outside this who are struggling, and you like, oh my god, why are you struggling so much in life? Like I see people who go to college, for example, and then like, okay, I'm working in this job, and like like there's this dead end bullshit that's happening, and I'm just trying to like progress in my career, and then it's like when I'm out of one job to the other, it's like I have to submit a piece of paper to someone, like like
Yes.
please sir, take me, I'm amazing, this is what we're trying to convince.
Yeah.
And as compared to that, when you just tap into any community which is actually passionate about a thing, and then if you like connect with a few people, then it's like so easy to connect with the other people who are doing like cool things, and
Yes,
then before you know
definitely.
it, like so many people who are
Yeah.
doing some really amazing things, right?
Yeah, I think if you start getting involved
Right.
just by pure interest, and you start doing things because you are interested in it,
Right.
not because you're trying to impress someone. Like you impress yourself basically. So
Yes.
you build things or you get involved in it, you do things, whether it's creative, analytical, logical, does not matter. Do something, right? If you're good at it, you will get good at it. Even if you're not naturally good at it, you
Right.
keep practicing and you keep doing a lot of different things, people will start noticing you. Like
Hmm.
in that community, you start posting things and you start showing other people that, hey, this is what I did. They will start noticing you, and maybe they will talk to another person like, hey, that person is doing something cool. You should check them out. And
Hmm.
eventually, that's how the word of mouth thing spreads. And in the beginning stage, that should be good enough. You should get enough attention to whatever you're doing just through word of mouth.
Hmm.
If you want it to become a big thing, the marketing of it comes much later. But start off something small. I think the problem is people they don't have patience. They
Right.
want whatever they're building to be recognized instantly, right? They want to become famous or they want their product to become big immediately.
Hmm.
People don't have patience. So they try to take shortcuts, they try to cheat their way into these things, and that's where they end up landing into trouble for
Hmm.
whatever reason, right? Yeah, I think patience is key. Like it's okay, yes, you might be struggling a bit, but it's okay to push it a bit more. as long as you're able to, gradually grow, and like the exponential growth is what you're supposed to be aiming for, not a linear growth.
Right. Awesome. So this is one side of things.
Mm.
So, what is the other part of life that you would say is something which is very important for people that kind of enriches their whole personality and things like that?
Well, ideally, everything should be encompassed into one thing, right?
Okay.
So, of course, there are other things that I do. Like there is, I like fitness, so I like to keep myself fit so that I am, functioning the most efficient way possible. I
Right.
don't want to have any kinds of problems in my life, right? I want to
Mhm.
be happy. I don't want to struggle. I don't want to suffer. Struggle is good. Suffering is bad, right? If you're struggling for getting somewhere, that's okay, but you shouldn't suffer in that process.
Right.
So as long as you're able to differentiate between those two things, it should be fine. Yeah, I mean, there is the spiritual aspect. I would say people should, look into it. Like I think, apart from your productivity, which we just discussed, I think whatever we just discussed would come under productivity.
Mhm.
There's also creativity, right? I think you should do things that are creative, right? Like
Mhm.
art, for example, or music, or I think you should do something that,
Any form of expression, basically.
yeah, any form of expression, right? Which could also be productive itself. Like
Mhm.
creativity itself could be productive. Like there are people who monetize their creativity.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of problems in that industry. I don't think we'll get into that, but ideally, yeah, you should have hobbies. You should have lots of interests that you're
Mhm.
not actively pursuing as your productive goal,
Right.
right? I do a lot of things myself. Like I love archery. Like time to time, I just practice archery. Recently, I've been getting to wall climbing, right?
Mhm.
Something that I like. So in general, I like things that require focus. So that I would say that is my specialty, right? So I like to focus on things that require a lot of focus in the activities.
Right.
But yeah, there are people who like adrenaline rush, right?
Mhm.
Uh, there are some things that I do that like that are in that field as well. Um, but yeah, I think, I mean, this is a really wide topic to get into, right? Like there's health, there is
Right.
so many things. I don't know what you mean by specificity. Do you want me to get into something
No, I was just
specific?
asking like a general question just to see that where it goes.
Right. Yeah. Um, so with respect to health, yeah, I mean, I think there's a certain way I would consume my food, right? With respect to physical health, um, I would do. I work out almost every day, right?
Mm.
I do meditate, so I think this is very important to keep you sane.
Mm.
Because a lot of people are really stressed in their lives for whatever thing that they're doing. Um, for me, I found that music and meditation keeps me calm, right? Um, yeah, I meditate close to 30 minutes on a daily basis.
Mm.
I listen to music close to 30 minutes or 1 hour, again on a daily basis. So again, I would say that's my interest, and as long as people find hobbies for themselves, I think people do better in that sense.
Cool. Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Sure, man.
I think there's a lot more that I can actually talk to you about, but maybe I was thinking what I could do is like I can do like a bunch of interviews with you whenever I come around this way, and we can talk
Sure,
about like
sure, anytime.
many different topics.
Sure, yeah, I
Whatever
think
is fun.
we do explore a lot of topics, but then it has to come, I don't
Right.
think we can force the topic to come
Correct.
to our mind.
Right.
Whenever it happens, I think we can do something like this. It would be
Sweet.
great to explore because not a lot of things that we do speak about. Uh, there are a lot of things that we explore, but we may not find solutions immediately. But it's
Correct.
good to discuss. It's good to discuss because it keeps our mind active, right? It
Right.
gives us more time to, yeah, just get involved in that thought process, and maybe that's what drives solutions in general.
Right.
So I do like talking about these things. Yeah, so I would love to do it
Awesome.
later.
So, any college kids or like young people who are interested in like blockchain and development, and who would like to maybe work with you and stuff like that, how can they get in touch with you?
So I think the best way is, well, I'm quite active on Twitter. When I say active, I don't really post much, but I do browse a lot.
Okay.
So my handle is at radical romit. So, like,
Okay.
or if you want to contact me directly, I guess it would be Romit at zapit.io, zapit.io. That's
Okay.
my email. Just send an email to me regarding whatever you're interested in with respect to blockchain only, not
Right.
other things. But
Right.
yeah, we would love to have people on board. And
Cool. Awesome. If I'm not too lazy, I will put it in the description below. And if I am, then sorry, you'll have to like go through the video
yeah,
and get that
just go
information.
back over it.
Yeah. Sweet. Then I think that's
Awesome.
about it.
Sure, man. Thanks. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, everyone, and peace. I will see you guys in the next one.
Bye bye.